Good afternoon to all, wherever you might be around the world. I'm Gerald Murray, Chairman of your Air Force Association. You know, I'm excited to host AFA's inaugural Doolittle Leadership Forum. But let me say, our association takes our mission very seriously, to advocate for a dominant air and space forces. The creation of our Doolittle Leadership Center reflects our commitment to this important role. Today's forum is the first of many planned events where we seek to strengthen the important link between critical aerospace mission areas, key air and space force leaders, and local AFA chapters. There's no more important and vital mission to the Department of our Air Force than that of the world-class acquisition leaders that we're honored to present today from the Pentagon, from AFA's Doolittle Leadership Center, and from the spectacular National Museum of the United States Air Force. Today's event is possible only because of the outstanding support of AFA's Wright Memorial Chapter in Dayton, Ohio. In the months to come, we'll be partnering with other AFA chapters and speakers at many locations, facilitating a closer dialogue between Air Force and Space Force leaders, the industry that supports them, and the public on whose informed support we all depend. These events are designed to increase the dialogue among these different groups and to help better inform our national security debate at every level. We're especially thankful today for our event sponsors: Boeing, General Electric, Lockheed Martin, Pratt & Whitney, and Raytheon. We're also grateful for the other generous sponsors from our outstanding Wright Memorial Chapter. Thank you all for your generous support. Now, to kick off today's forum, please welcome AFA's President, Orville Wright.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am absolutely fired up to be joined today by Dr. Will Roper, our Department of the Air Force Senior Acquisition Executive and a great friend of the Air Force Association. Will, I have to tell you, in my humble opinion, you are the Air Force's most motivational thought leadership on innovation ever, and certainly in my 50 years or so in uniform. For all of us, Dr. Roper is at the forefront of innovative thinking that is accelerating change throughout your air and space forces today. His advocacy for pushing the bounds of existing technology and experimentation, leveraging agile software development, and investing in digital engineering has been crucial to cutting through red tape. Dr. Roper's goal, and I'm sure all of ours, is to beat the bad guys to the punch with new concepts and technology, so our development cycles go faster than theirs. So, sir, thank you again for ensuring our airmen and space professionals have exactly what they need to fight and to win. Our theme today is from acquisition to lethality and ties directly to national defense strategy requirements. So let's start off our discussion with the kick down the door capability that our joint force must have: next generation air dominance, or NGAD. Sir, we would appreciate your thoughts as we start off today on NGAD from a threat and operational requirements perspective. So again, thanks, sir.
Thanks, Orville. I appreciate those very kind introductory remarks, and I will do my best in my career to live up to them. I certainly don't today, and I want to thank the Air Force Association and everyone that's tuning in from home. I hope that you are doing well and getting used to doing things the way we are this morning, virtually. I can't underscore the importance of next generation air dominance enough. And it's because of a confluence of things that are hitting the Air Force at the same time. The first is the threat, as you referenced, Orville. This is a time of pivoting back to pure competition, but very different than the one that we successfully engaged in the Cold War. This is not going to be a period where technology investments are going to take decades. They're going to be mainly driven by governments. And when a step change function is achieved, you turn it into a large acquisition program that you buy in bulk. Every one of those assumptions is incorrect. Technology doesn't take decades. It is not driven by governments primarily. And when we make a step change function, we should not buy in bulk, because technology will change many times over before that traditional acquisition ends. everything about how we do business needs to change to engage in today's peer competition where technology is ubiquitous. So first thing for NGAD, we don't know what we're going to face on the battlefield. We have to own that up front. Uncertainty is going to be our enemy just as much as many nations will be. When you face uncertainty, you need agility. You need agility in terms of how your operators train, and that has been true of the Air Force since day one. But we also need agility in terms of how we get new technology into our jets. And the reason agility matters so much is that it will ensure that whenever the flag goes up, we have the latest technology in the planes we're flying that day, not waiting for it an epoch later. The next reason we need agility is that as technology changes, we need to adapt to it. If an adversary were to make a gain ahead of us, we would need to throw the throttle full down and catch up. So the system has to be able to do that. And agility is something that I'm very excited about as I pivot to the second big thing. That's the confluence of events that make NGAD so important. And that is a shift in the acquisition paradigm. Agility is great. It's great to say it. It's great to say that we need it, and we do. But if there wasn't something that let us do it, if there wasn't anything new that would affect it, then why say the words at all? And thank goodness there is. Digital engineering is a term that is becoming, unfortunately, a buzzword in the Pentagon, but it is a big deal, Air Force. It is a big deal. It has already revolutionized commercial industries like the automotive. And if we let it, it will change the acquisition system we use for airplanes, satellites, and weapons. I think all of you have probably gotten a sense that automobiles have changed quite a bit over the last 7 to 8 years. Companies like Tesla were able to break into a market that historically didn't allow new entrants into the everyday automobile. The reason is that automotive really looked like defense in many respects. It was locked down by a handful of big companies, because to break into that market, what would you need? You'd need, well, a huge workforce and huge tooling and huge facilities. And so trying to break in and making that upfront capital investment really wasn't feasible for a new entrant until Tesla changed the market. And they never got their production capability up as high as a Ford. They never got their price down as low as a Toyota. But through superior design, superior engineering, they flipped the paradigm for the automotive industry and eventually changed the way those automotive giants engage their own designs. And the industry won't go back. All of you probably have a sense of that as you're driving around, that the cars are different than they were 15 years ago. There is a digital element to them, an autonomous element to how they are designed that allows them to be better, more reliable, and more adaptable. But I think the best analog for the Air Force is Formula One racing, which is just amazing. I mean, this is a sport where the entire winning and losing mainly happens digitally. Cars are conceived and designed digitally. They have to design around 85% obsolescence across racing seasons year to year. Whatever they're building with today won't be there in future. Imagine if that was visited upon us. But core to competing with nations like China is that their digital design allows them to explore more cars than they could if they were building physical prototypes, even to the point of being able to optimize cars race to race, training their driver digitally ahead of getting out on any racetrack, so that the first time they're in their version of the cockpit, they're ready to win. A Formula One race car is as close as you're going to get to a fighter on the ground. And the fact that they are using digital engineering to bring those checkered flags to their side tells us that we can do the same for us. It's a very, very big deal. I guess the only reason that we should have pause is that it's going to change everything about how we do business, and not just my part of the business. It's going to change how we train. It's going to change how we think about requirements and forecasting new technologies to get them into our jets. It's going to change the entire Air Force end to end. But, you know, with the threats that we face today, if we keep doing things the way we have, why would we expect to be sitting here at a future AFA event happy about the Air Force that we have? We have to have things change. Today's process is not keeping up with the threats. It is not keeping up with commercial tech. So I'll end on NGAD, Orville, by saying that unfortunately, everything's going to have to change to do it. And fortunately, everything's going to have to change to do it.
Well, thanks, sir. I heard a quote the other day that if you don't like change, you're going to hate defeat. So we're with you.
Well
said. We're going to shift to the Advanced Battle Management System, or ABMS, and the experiments you've been running to prove concepts relating to Joint All-Domain Command and Control, or JADC2. So, sir, if you would, could you briefly define how JADC2 is critical to fighting and to winning, and how ABMS is getting us to that goal?
Appreciate that question, Orville. JADC2 really is becoming so big and broad and so used in the Pentagon that I don't know what it means anymore from a traditional operational context. It's such a broad concept, maybe broader than any that's been put forward before, and the breadth makes it very hard to get your hands around it. And ABMS is really the system that powers JADC2. And consequently, it inherits its breadth. And that makes it difficult for many in the Air Force, even me, to get my arms around the immensity of what we're taking on. So rather than start with the way future warfares will be and come back, just think about your lives and how they changed as we migrated from the initial internet that was computers at home connected to each other via wires to the Internet of Things today, where the connections are mainly wireless and nearly everything is touching each other through some means of communication. Well, the early internet was very good at allowing you, a person, to find information in other places. It made libraries become something that wasn't as needful. It made dictionaries and encyclopedias effectively become dust collectors on shelves. It was really meant for you, for people. And what changed as we moved to the Internet of Things is that most of the data was, one, not meant to be human discoverable, though it still was. It was really meant to be machine discoverable. The searchers on the Internet of Things are mainly machines, but of course they're not searching the way that we did back in the 90s on Yahoo. They're finding information organically through publish and subscribe means. There's an imperative to have the data you produce published. There's an imperative to subscribe to data that's relevant to your mission. And that's changed everything about how we live our lives much more powerfully than that original internet did, due to machine-to-machine data exchanges. Because once you have those, then centralizing your compute, centralizing your data repository naturally puts you into the analytics and AI that we enjoy today, that pushes you the latest cat video you should be watching, or the next thing that you should be checking out on Netflix. We all have a sense of the power of that. It probably have had spooky coincidences where Amazon and other such vendors were able to predict something and you didn't even feel you had been on their website looking at whatever it is that they rightfully suspected you need, because the entire world is connected together. Well, that's effectively what JADC2 is asking us to do. It is asking us to keep decision superiority in a machine-to-machine world where we will face similar analytics and AI on future battlefields. That is a huge paradigm-shifting concept. And what do you use it for? Well, you use it for everything. What do you use the internet for? Define its use. You use it for everything. So in our context, logistics, warfighting, personnel management, what will we not do with it? So that's the first thing that's holding us back. That is a huge undertaking. But here's the bright side. We don't have to make it up. It already exists. You're using it right now. We're connected via this machine-to-machine data exchange enterprise commercially right now. And using services like YouTube, videos like this will connect to other videos that you may like. Imagine it's battlefield analog. Information intelligence that's relevant to a particular operator being found similar to other data that may be relevant to that mission. We don't have to invent a different kind of internet for the military. We simply have to build what works commercially in a military sense, and that is all ABMS is. So it sounds like we ought to be able to get off the dime and do it, and I've been very pleased that we have. In September of this year, we demonstrated what I would say is the first militarized Internet of Things, where cloud-based analytics and AI were able to close a kill chain in a little less than 10 seconds that would have taken minutes to do in the past. And those minutes, those minutes to seconds could be the difference between succeeding or failing on the battlefield. So what do we need to do to make this real? Well, we need to get ABMS out of research and development and into procurement and operations and sustainment. We can stand up an internet really quickly. We can create connectivity. We can create waveforms that share information back and forth like we did on the F-22 and F-35 information exchange. We can go demonstrate that in the on-ramps, and we have. And if you take a picture of what's happening, it doesn't really look like anything new is at that on-ramp. All the platforms are ones that you know and love. But what's different is the things that you can't take pictures of, the amount of data they're exchanging and where it goes, not just platform to platform, but platform to cloud to platform. The cloud, the analytics, the AI, the use of capabilities like Maven, those were firsts for the department in September. But what happens after we do a demonstration like that, where the secret sauce is the things between things? Well, we take it down because it's a demonstration, it's in research and development. And so what Chief Brown is championing right now is getting this into the field and leaving it behind. And so we've been planning for over 6 months now to designate a program executive office to be the lead procurer and fielder of ABMS as our architecture team continues to be its developer. And I'm very happy to say that the Rapid Capabilities Office that champions many capabilities we have to have to win, like the B-21 and the X-37B, will be the lead PEO for ABMS. And we have already selected ABMS Release 1, which is a subset of capabilities that make a mini internet that gets data from clouds forward to the tactical edge, our fighters, via mobility gateways and analytics that will be fielded on our tanker fleet. So it's a microcosm of the internet where the cloud is there, the analytics are there, the tanker is playing the role of a cell tower. It's routing data back and forth between the cloud and users. And the users are the fighters that are inside of that area denial, communication denial bubble, but are not denied talking with the tanker that's standing just outside of harm's way. So from there, once we've fielded that, it's just merely a question of what's next. What do you then connect to this first instance of a militarized Internet of Things? And then as to your first question, well, what's its use? What's its requirement? What do you do all domain-wise with something like this? You can do anything. It's just as transformative. And so the secret for ABMS in 2021 is getting some dirt on it, meaning when we demonstrate it, it stays in the field. There's a real program with a real baseline, with real war fighters ready to use it day to day, not an exceptional event that we stood up to prove the technology works. We already know the technology works. We use it every day. This is about showing we can use it on our military systems without having to wait for traditional acquisition timelines.
Thanks, sir. You know, it occurs to me that what you're doing is you're supporting the secret sauce in our joint warfighting capability. What our young women and men do in cockpits today is so far beyond what we experienced even 10 years ago in how they handle information and use information. And I can't thank you enough. You're leading the charge for building the information capabilities, not only that we need, but in fact further empowers and enables this generation of warfighters. So great thoughts, and obviously moving things over to the RCO and Mr. Walden is great news. So let me move forward a bit here on the concept of pitch days. And so while you're, as you just explained, you're doing everything to strengthen the capabilities of our joint warfighters out there, you're helping industry. You're helping their generational cohort counterparts in industry with pitch days, like the recent International Space Pitch Day. So what have we learned and gained from those events? And what can we do to help ensure that this great concept isn't never shut down by bureaucracy?
Well, if I had a solution for bureaucracy, I would write that book and already have retired. I think it's its nature to resist changes of any kind, and that's not always a bad thing. I mean, the fact that there's some stability in bureaucracy allows dumb ideas to not get out into the light of day, but it also keeps good ones from finding the same light. And Orville, what's been the common thread of the topics thus far? We started with NGAD and the need to bring in a faster acquisition cycle so we can spiral new technologies into air superiority faster than we have since the 50s. Well, that entire concept is predicated on a commercial technology, digital engineering, coming into defense. And then we talked about the advanced battle management system, which is really just the military's Internet of Things. That's another example of commercial technology that we are pulling into defense. So the whole idea with pitch days and with AFWERX more broadly is that our opportunity space is mainly in commercial tech. And I've been delighted that the Air Force has embraced this concept. We still are going to do military unique technology with our traditional defense companies. In fact, we're hoping that our flight demonstrator for our hypersonic weapon will be successful this month and that we'll get into production next year. And a hypersonic weapon is not something we're going to get from a commercial company anytime soon. So there will always be a need for that. But 80% of the research and development in this nation is commercial. And so we have to have a process that makes sense for commercial companies that don't have any defense people on their roster. And so our AFWERX process is really about reaching companies in plain English. There's a whole branch of AFWERX called AF Ventures, Air Force Ventures, which is focused on acting like an investor for the Air Force, like a venture capitalist, but doing it with contracts instead of owning equity in the company. Well, that's a fantastic model. And because if you think about it, we are kind of like an investor. We seed a lot of technology, but we don't really think of it like a VC would, like we're seeding a lot of technology to have one of them come through and then end up paying for the rest, very similar to how anyone approaches investments for their retirement. Well, we're bringing that methodology into the Air Force, and it's sticking really well. In fact, sticking so well with us that the analysis we're doing of companies to put them on contract for these investments is so well received by private venture capitalists that we are averaging 4-to-1 matching of dollars. That means every dollar that the Air Force is putting into commercial tech companies is being matched on average by 4 private investment dollars. We are literally multiplying our money. And that speaks to how far we've come. Pitch days are really a great way to talk with these commercial companies that don't know how to talk defense. It gets them in front of us where we have warfighters and acquisition types and technologists, and we're doing the source selection in real time without paper documents as our primary means of communication. It's talking and asking questions. Think of it as a Shark Tank. These are pretty brutal, Orville. These are not easy to get through. But the thing I've been delighted is that pitch days have helped us find companies we would not have found otherwise. And it actually works both ways. Yes, it helps that company be able to get their ideas to us quickly, where we can award contracts quickly without having to get a PhD in defense acronyms. But it's also recalibrating the Air Force and Space Force. It's teaching us what small companies can do. They are not small in impact just because they're small in size. We have small businesses working with us now that are building quiet supersonic airplanes and attempting to build a hypersonic drone. These are small businesses. But we should just change the word small to agile. They're not small, they're agile. And, you know, Yoda in Star Wars told us not to judge him by his size, and we shouldn't judge these companies by theirs either. So pitch days are about providing them a level playing field to get their ideas to us. And they've gone viral. They're not just used for commercial startups out in Silicon Valley. We've used them to find replacement parts for the TF-33 engine. We've used an extended pitch-like formalism at the recent Advanced Manufacturing Olympics, where companies had to compete, you know, over days, trying to solve some of the most difficult additive manufacturing challenges that we have in the government. So I think that's going to be an easy one to stick, because if you think about it this way, why would we buy something from a company without talking to them, without actually making them pitch their idea to us, or we could ask difficult questions? Do we really think the paper documents that we receive in proposals are so profound, with nothing between the lines, that we can make the right choices? Not anymore. And with 80% of our opportunity space outside of defense, pitch days are something that need to come into more and more traditional acquisition formalisms, so that companies who may not be able to build the entire platform, but who can build a portion of it, a specific application of it, have a chance to talk to the government directly.
That's terrific, sir. It occurs to me listening to you also that one of the things that's happening that you led in pitch days is that you brought some just outstanding and many times younger Americans and bright engineers into a sense of what the defense of this nation is all about, because you're introducing the reality of the threat that we all have to face and understand, and then bringing, as you said, agile thinking and a new generation of thinking. So there's a real value, I think, to those pitch days at a very national or strategic level to encourage and motivate among a group that may not have been able to even collaborate or get to know their generational cohort counterparts in uniform. So good stuff, great stuff. If we could, sir, let's talk a bit more about hypersonics. Obviously, an area of interest that we've all been looking at for some time, to hold deep targets at risk. And certainly that's the Indo-PACOM challenge around the world. You know, as you bring your notion about AI into how rapidly the OODA loop is going to unfold for the enemy, we're going to have to be able to strike targets quickly and responsibly, and in every opportunity at range. So could you talk a little bit about both the operational requirement for hypersonics weapons, as well as the risk that we know that industry and Department of Defense, Department of the Air Force is going to have to face? And then certainly a bit about how air and space must integrate to target hypersonic missiles, hypersonic weapons in a way that only our air and space professionals can make it happen. So thanks, sir. Over to you.
Thanks, Orville. Hypersonics is an interesting topic. I'm clearly very pro the capability because it's been a big focus of mine in this position and was a big focus of mine when I worked at the Strategic Capabilities Office as well. I mean, early here in the Air Force, we jump-started 2 hypersonics programs using the Middle Tier Acquisition Rapid Prototyping Authority. And we've now down selected to Aero, which, knock on wood, is poised to become our nation's first operational hypersonic weapon. But here's what we got to get our head around. Hypersonic weapons are a capability. They are not a solution. Now, those are words. Let me flesh those out. I think the name belies that they are going to be more impactful than they will actually be. They're not a solution where when you write it down, you put a box around it and you're done with the math problem. There's a reason why China pursued hypersonic weapons as almost a solution against us. They face forward operating locations and ships that are defended by missile defense that we have put sizable investment into for decades. And missile defense, where I started my career, is a very complicated technology, but it does have some weaknesses. And one of them is that we're trying to defend large areas. That was the original direction missile defense was driven, trying to protect large areas, the nation, theaters, nations against rogue enemy missiles. Well, when you need to defend a large area, it creates a vicious circle of design. So a large area means that whatever you're using to defend it, you're either going to have a lot of distributed systems, which tends to be cost ineffective, or you're going to have a central one. But then that forces some technology imperatives on you. You need to be able to fly far away from wherever you've put your missile defense system. So we're already talking about a big rocket. And because you're having to see the thing you're launching at, we're talking about a big sensor, a big radar. But now, because the rocket has flown so far away from the radar, it needs an end-game kill vehicle. It needs a seeker that can close that loop at the end. And every one of those technologies is expensive. So there is a price of missile defense that does not currently scale well. And then there's something else that architecture also visits on you, is that solid rocket motor that you have in your interceptor, once you light it, you can't unlight it. And so it creates an imperative on us to know where the threat is going to be. And unfortunately, when an enemy is able to fly hypersonically, so think ballistic missile goes way up, into space and back down, it's following, I know it, in school we're told a parabola, but it's really an ellipse. So it's following that. It's very predictable. It also gets up really high where you can see it with that long-range radar. And so now imagine, say if this is the curvature of the Earth, rather than getting up over it where an enemy can see you, or I'm sorry, getting up over it where we can see that enemy, not the other way around, where we can see that enemy and start tracking it and launch our missile. Now imagine that you're hypersonic and you glide underneath. You're staying low enough so that the curvature of the Earth protects you until the very end where you cross the curvature of the Earth. And now there's not enough time for you to get your solid rocket motor interceptor to giddy up and burn out where that threat is going to be. You're sized to start earlier. You can't compress that into a shorter window. That's why China made those investments. It makes a lot of sense, right? We've made so much investment in that class of interceptor that something that fundamentally challenges the principle of ballistic missile defense by making the missiles non-ballistic is a smart move. Well, no nation has made the investment in missile defense that we have. So as we field the nation's first hypersonic weapon, and I'm excited we're doing that, it doesn't undercut this investment that our adversaries have, nor take away a principle of safety that I would suspect they hold. The U.S. has exceptional capabilities, especially in stealth aircraft that can penetrate and put weapons where they wish. So do our adversaries believe we don't have the ability to target them? I would hope not. Hypersonic weapons just then become another way to do it. It's another orthogonal way to hold opponents at risk, and it's one we should do, because rather than having to use those stealth assets every time we need to target and destroy something, we can have platforms that stand off, B-52s standing off, acting like a conveyor belt, slinging in weapon after weapon, and being able to fly from further distance away. That has a ton of flexibility. the thing that I think will be game changing about it, though not a solution you put a box around, is the logistics simplicity. You know, B-52, they're ready for mission today. So as we hang hypersonic weapons on them, we don't have to pay for new infrastructure. We just simply have to be able to mate the weapon on the airplane, and that B-52 could fly to one theater one day and a different theater the next. And that flexibility and the fact that that B-52 does not have to have basing rights with any nation to be able to get into the mission, and the fact that a forward operating base doesn't need to be safe and secure for us to consummate that mission, provides a ton of flexibility for the Air Force as we set up an inside type game with stealth airplanes and an outside game with our long-range hypersonic weapons. And what I hope the Air Force will not do, nor the department, is say, well, which one of these is right? And I can't tell you how many times I have been in that meeting. It's enough so it is making me pull my hair out. There isn't a right answer for adversaries as capable as the ones we're facing. The right way are answers, not answers. The worst thing to deal with are permutations, where you have to plan against many things. The complexity goes up. Complexity is our ally against advanced nations. That's what makes them challenging to us. So we have to take on the mindset of there needing to be a mix of solutions that work together to create those permutations, the complexity that is a conundrum an adversary can't easily solve their way out of. The adversaries we face are capable enough, especially China, that if we give them a singular problem whose solution gives them the victory, then they have the time, talent, and treasure to solve it. We should give them a landscape of problems where it is not clear how many of them have to be solved to give any margin of victory. And in that context, hypersonic weapons provide another problem that needs to be solved by the opponents we'll face.
Well, thanks, sir. You know, again, listening to you, you've done a marvelous job of, I think, tying together NGAD, ABMS, and now hypersonics in a system of systems approach, and giving the bad guys a more complex problem to solve. I think it's marvelous. And even more so, I didn't hear you say anti-access or aerial denial one time. You just talked about, in my humble terms, the best defense is a great offense. So terrific. Could we take just a few minutes as we wrap up here to talk a bit about how your Air Force Association, working closely with the Department of the Air Force and our Space Force, and certainly with our industry counterparts, and with our AQ counterparts, and certainly AFWIC. And then, you know, we're going to shift to AFMC and AFRL. So how do we, AFA, across some 200 chapters, engaging with congressional representatives, engaging with community leaders, help tell the Air Force story in staying with really your leadership vector, innovation, and everything you've talked about today? There has to be, I think, some very straightforward, continuing drum beats of information, or drum beats of communication, if you will, to continue to really reinforce what you're doing. So it's kind of a broad question, but as we shift to AFMC and the great leaders there and the smart people there, just some thoughts.
Orville, the thing I would hope the most for the Air Force and Space Force, and the Air Force Association can certainly help on this and has helped on this. I mean, you have given me a wonderful platform at every AFA to talk about the technologies we're championing, and that wasn't something that had been done in the past, and I really appreciate that, to make the Air Force proud of its technology company that is its acquisition team. The thing I would wish is that the Air Force's brand is innovation, and I think we're getting there. When I came in, I felt like it was the fighter And there's nothing wrong with fighters. I am the biggest patron of our next generation air dominance program. I am for the Air Force having amazing airplanes. But what I feel from reading history, and it's long before my time, long before my connection with you, which I'm very proud to have now, is that in the early Air Force, air power was so in flux that it wasn't clear what would be coming down the pipelines. Planes changed so frequently to try to keep up with a Soviet threat during a period when supersonic flight was something that could be done by everyone, and records were being broken, whether speed, altitude, payloads, they were being broken nearly every month. That was a period where innovation, the next thing, was always more important than the current thing. And the slowdown of technology and the slowdown of programs in the Cold War is one of the real tragedies, one of the real casualties of the Cold War, specifically for the Air Force, because it took away that adaptive, agile vibrancy of the future only being a year away. And so we better get ready for it and let go of the past. And so I'm excited to see the Air Force starting to wake back up, because we don't have to wait on technologies anymore. They're coming faster than we can keep up with them in government, and that's our challenge. So that's what I would wish. I'm so proud that the Air Force has grabbed on to things like software factories with funny names. You know, Kessel Run, Kobayashi Maru, Level Up, Space Camp, Ski Camp. I mean, I could have seen an Air Force say, "Will, I don't want you doing these sci-fi names. Thank you, but we're a dignified Air Force." But we're bringing in this kind of tech startup innovation edge, which fits well with this service. And now we're working on a militarized internet, and have actually, went and shot a cruise missile down with it, using a hypervelocity gun, talking about that for years, and went and did it in a matter of months, and connected the F-22 and the F-35 in a matter of months. And we may have a few more interesting things coming before the end of the year as well. The thing I love about this is that innovation is what keeps it together. But don't let that become a buzzword either. Innovation is really about solving a problem. The problem we're trying to solve is an adversary that can match us person for person, dollar for dollar, concept for concept. So the only way we win is to keep changing, to keep bringing in the new things, no matter what they are, even if we can't fully envision what their impact's going to be. And last week, it was really a proud moment for me in the Air Force when we certified the first electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicle, or flying car, the first to get a military flight certification. We created a new market. Before, you couldn't make $1 in this nation flying those vehicles. And because of that certification, and I expect many others from the 17 companies that are currently working with us, that the Air Force will end up catalyzing a new market of flying vehicles that could end up changing the world significantly, using our military dollars, our military market, which is really the fact we purchase things and certify things, as well as our missions to be a catalyst. And this is ahead of even knowing exactly what we want to do with them. Are we going to do disaster relief, humanitarian assistance, rescue? Well, we could do all of them. But the reason I've been proud of the Air Force on this project is we jumped in for innovation's sake. Innovation is a battlefield itself. If anything amazing is happening anywhere, if we're not involved with it, we could be involved with it against us on our adversary's terms. So we can't stand back and hope that the world's best technology is going to be available. We can't stand back and hope we're going to have the world's best industrial base to make the 10th generation aircraft, whatever it looks like. We've got to actively engage innovation itself as a battlefield so that technology and markets emerge in this nation first, so that we have an industrial base that is capable of building a war-winning Air Force. That's backwards from the way we're trained. We are given a world-leading industrial base, and we go build a war-winning Air Force with it. That will lose in this competition with globalized technology. We actually have to find the way to make an Air Force, a Space Force, or any part of the military a catalyst to make sure that our industrial base remains at the top. And if it does, then our military will in tandem. And I worry about that a bit because we don't train our folks to think about markets outside of the military or just technology that may not even have a requirement, to treat that as passionately as the lasers and hypersonic weapons for which we do have requirements. But we need to. It's that future vision, that identity with innovation that will keep the Air Force and the Space Force where they need to be as the services that have a wonderful past, but that are much more focused on their future.
That's just terrific. We've got a few more minutes here. One of the discussions that many of us have had, and I think have included you, and building on the requirement for innovation, and certainly bring in the whole notion of AI. Many years ago, Jimmy Doolittle, General Arnold, Jimmy Stewart was a leader in the Air Force Association, talked about manned combat space planes. And where we've gotten to over time is it's really too expensive to put a human being, say at low Earth orbit or higher, flying around in a manned combat space plane, looking around or potentially using weapons, getting up there based on a, taking off on an advanced fan, and getting to essentially supersonic capability with scramjets, that kind of thing. So within that broad context of not getting surprised if the Chinese put a manned combat space plane up there, are there concerns that you would share while staying unclassified at this in this session?
Well, I'm concerned about nearly everything, but the flip side is I'm typically excited about the same thing, concerned about it coming to be on our adversaries' turn, excited about doing the same on ours. And I think that's a theme that has followed me in my career in government, well over eight years now on the government side, and with Lincoln Laboratory before that, is that surprise is everything, and not being surprised is everything. And that's why agility is the only solution you can have in a world that's replete with technology. It's the only thing that can delineate you from your adversary. As Jeff Bezos said, anything else your opponent can copy. Only your agility makes you unique. Only your agility can keep you at the top. And so there's something for us to take from that. As I look to the next generation of the Air Force and put my wish list for it, top of it has got to be artificial intelligence. It's already helping you on the internet in benign things like finding content that might be useful for you and advertising to you. But nothing bad happens if it suggests a cat video that's not your favorite, or sends an ad to you that maybe isn't something that you buy. But AI in the military sense, life and mission will depend on it. But the fact that it does, and the fact that it is developed and will continue to be developed by commercial Gale Force wins, can't continue to have us sitting on the sidelines hoping that some kind of magical form of AI will jump into our cockpits. We actually have to get off the dime and apply it. Just like we're doing with the Advanced Battle Management System, we can militarize AI, but do it safely. And we must, if we want to keep decision advantage. AI is not a solution, just like I said, hypersonics isn't. We can't say we got AI and so we've won. The reason for having AI is to give us decision advantage. AI is very good if it's presented with a scenario that's similar to what it's trained for. It's very bad if it's not. So the next epic of the Air Force is not going to be one that pairs AI against AI on the future battlefield. I would love it if our adversary decided to do that on their end. But on our end, we're going to have people continue to be involved and have an instinct for when AI is going to be at the top of its game and when it's going to be at the bottom. So with it being available on the internet, where is it? Like, where is it in our Air Force. The fact that we have not demonstrated it yet in the department shows that there is something keeping us from really embracing commercial technology, especially digital ones. And I saw yesterday or today that our partnership with the Jake on putting the Agile Condor pod on the MQ-9 Reaper, that we've now got that on contract, and that'll be great. But we've known computer vision is good at finding targets for years. We get to see that on our home devices, our home smartphones, our cameras. So we already know that. So what's held us back from doing it? And I think the underlying reason is that the Air Force has really not been a software savvy service. And that has been a huge focus of mine since being here, getting the software factory stood up, the Kessel Runs and the 50 other organizations that are like them, getting them moved over to our enterprise cloud, Cloud One, Platform One, adopting transformative technologies like containerization and Kubernetes that let us get from our cloud onto airplanes that fly through them. And that really sets us up to go do AI at scale. In fact, a few weeks ago, our U2 Fed Lab pushed a live software update to a U2 in flight. And that's the first time that's been done to a military platform, a live update pushed while it's operating, where otherwise we would have to wait for months, maybe years, to be able to do that. So I see that in the cards now. And that's the thing I would recommend the Air Force doing first to make sure it doesn't see surprise. We're going to have a militarized internet, machine-to-machine data exchanges connecting all the way back to cloud, stateside, and myriad ways, software-defined radios and networks to make sure that cloud-based data and analytics can route forward. But when it hits the cockpit or that operator console for space, if there is not AI as part of that value chain, even up in the cockpit itself, helping that operator sort through data that would be dizzying for a human to deal with, then the best operator in the world can lose to a mediocre operator that has AI on a good day. And that's the thing we don't want to have happen on our watch. We have operator superiority. If we give them the AI advantage, it will create a confounding effect on adversaries, because now they have to train for both our people and our AI. But if we don't do that, we will be asking people to try to close their OODA loop against a machine that can make 1 million different decisions before a human can even read a display. And that is too big of a risk for us to ask our next generation of airmen and space professionals to take it on. Beyond that, when we start flying around in Battlestar Galacticas, I don't know. I think there are going to be some pretty amazing things about launching bases and doing logistics via rocketry. I can see with the progress SpaceX is making on re-landing rockets that pushing large scale quantities of material around the world, that will be possible. But that's a step beyond where we need to be on AI. We need to do it right now on our watch. And once we've operationalized it, then we need to figure out how to beat it. And once we figure out how to beat it, then we'll try to fix what we broke. And back and forth, red teaming and blue teaming for the foreseeable future.
Outstanding. I feel like, Will, I could use a little AI sitting around me this morning to keep up with you. This is terrific. Building on your note about Air Force being more software savvy, absolutely. And I think probably the investment and the leadership focus gives us a lot of bang for the buck. So that's great guidance. Well, sir, you've done a marvelous job of staying with our theme from acquisition to lethality. And I think more important, really describing why, in General Brown's term, we must accelerate change or lose. And it's at every level, strategic, operational, tactical levels of warfare. And then again, as you have done such a good job of pulling together our commercial companies, our small companies, and focused on not just agility, but imagination. I think that comes from across those companies. There's no doubt in my mind that you're motivating, and you continue to give us the capability to stay ahead of the bad guys, and especially the dawning threat that the Chinese pose around the world. So, sir, with that, thanks again. We're going to shift to Wright Pat in our Wright Memorial chapter, and General Bunch, General Pringle, General Morse, and we want to stay in close touch as we continue to support all that you and General Brown and Secretary Barrett continue to give our nation in your leadership, your thinking, your innovation, and always your encouragement. Sir, thanks so much again for being with us today.
Thanks, Orville, and thanks, AFA, and everyone watching, and enjoyed our conversation. But it's not worth much if it doesn't turn into action and capabilities. So we got a lot of work ahead. So let's get to work.
Yes, sir. Thank you again. And Mr. Chairman, back to you.
Thank you, Orville and Dr. Roper. The next part of our program today is an expert panel of leaders who join us from the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. The Air Force Museum is the oldest and largest military aviation museum in the world, with more than 350 aircraft, spacecraft, and missiles, and thousands of artifacts spread over some 19 acres of indoor exhibit space. The museum collects, researches, conserves, interprets, and presents the Air Force's history, heritage, and traditions, as well as today's mission to fly, fight, and win in airspace and cyberspace. Now, before we introduce our panelists, we have a short video to share to help our audience understand what a great treasure this museum is to our nation. If you've never been to the Air Force Museum, I invite you to go. It's a must-visit location that will edify you and your family on the rich heritage of the United States Air Force. Now, it's time for our next event as we continue our theme of From Acquisition to Lethality. The panel we're distinguished to hear from is made up of the distinguished leadership of Air Force Materiel Command. But before we introduce our panel, let's take a moment to view another brief video to help us all appreciate the breadth and depth of AFMC's mission. Please roll the next video.
So what exactly does Air Force Materiel Command do for the Air Force anyway? We could start by saying we're a command of more than 87,000 strong, with lots of really smart people who do really important things. But that doesn't begin to tell the story of AFMC. From uniforms, to runways, to aircraft, to nuclear weapons, the food our airmen eat, to the tools our airmen use. The AFMC mission impacts everything the Air Force does. Our mission is to develop, deliver, support, and sustain war-winning capabilities for our warfighters. That means we investigate and develop new technology, make that technology work for the warfighter, buy it, maintain it, and make sure it continues to work through upgrades and maintenance. We do this to make sure our Air Force continues to be the most lethal air, space, and cyber force the world has ever known. AFMC airmen have their hand in every Air Force mission. Now, how does one command manage to touch every Air Force mission? Say hello to our workforce. Over 87,000 patriots around the globe. AFMC airmen are everywhere. We are made up of 6 centers responsible for research and development, acquisition, testing, maintenance, sustainment, and daily mission support for our conventional and nuclear weapons systems. We build and maintain installations across the globe. We retire worn-out weapon systems. And we preserve the stories and heritage of our Air Force for future generations. From inception to retirement, AFMC does it all. And our nation is counting on us to do it all. Let's try to break this down a bit. Think about your car. When you drove it off the lot, did you think about the designers who created the cutting-edge vehicle? The engineers who made sure the radio doesn't turn on the windshield wipers? Probably not. But in reality, that's exactly what AFMC does. When our warfighters need a new weapons system, we come up with a concept, an idea. We work with all 6 of our centers towards a common goal of delivering what our Air Force needs to fly, fight, and win, today and in the future. Now let's take a quick look at what these centers do to make things happen for AFMC. First up are the scientists, engineers, the idea people. These airmen find, develop, and deliver new military technologies, reimagining what's possible to create innovative new capabilities for our military. What are we talking about? How about metals and ceramics for engines to withstand the extreme heat and high-pressure environments for hypersonic speeds? Our new stretchable liquid metal systems can conduct energy regardless of shape or strain. Our high-powered electromagnetic system can strategically defeat swarming drones in an instant. And we're developing high-speed weapons to keep our enemies at bay in contested environments. AFRL pushes the boundaries of what's possible for air and space. The airmen of the Air Force Life Cycle Management Center are the shoppers for the command. They play a key role in finding solutions that get technology in our warfighters' hands as fast as possible. Our Life Cycle Management Center teams work with mission partners and contractors to create solutions for Air Force weapons and systems, from beginning to retirement, ensuring our warfighters have the competitive advantage. If airmen fly it, fuel it, transport it, drive it, wear it, eat it, communicate with it, or drop it on targets, our AFL-CMC airmen provide it. They have developed and managed the most powerful Air Force on the planet. So let's circle back to your new car. Let's say you're driving down the road and you turn on your radio, expecting your favorite tunes. Instead, your blinker turns on. Now, imagine that lack of detailed engineering in a lethal weapons system. We have to make sure our systems work right. Our Air Force Test Center methodically checks out each system the Life Cycle Management Center buys to eliminate problems and issues before a system reaches a warfighter's hands and make sure the taxpayer got what they paid for. They test the limits of our new systems so operators stay safe. They broke the sound barrier in 1947, and they continue to take appropriate risks to ensure airmen come home safe from the fight. Once a system is placed into action, it needs to be maintained. Just like you should take your car to the mechanic for routine maintenance, our Air Force weapons systems need periodic servicing and updates to stay in action. That's the role of our teams at the Air Force Sustainment Center. Through our depots located across the U.S., our skilled maintainers and craftsmen provide world-class maintenance and supply chain management, leveraging cutting-edge systems to predict future failures. Print parts with 3D printers, and reverse engineer parts to ensure our platforms retain the cutting edge for the warfighter. Our AFSC teams, our mechanics, keep our aircraft and systems as ready as possible for our airmen across the globe. AFMC is also responsible for ensuring our nation's nuclear deterrent is never doubted and always feared. Our Nuclear Weapons Center airmen synchronize all aspects of nuclear material management for our nation, from developing next-generation capabilities to supporting development and testing of nuclear weapons for our Air Force and sustaining current capabilities for decades to come. While the other centers are focusing on systems and platforms, our Air Force Installation and Mission Support Center is hard at work ensuring installations and support structures exist for our airmen and the systems they bring to the fight. Just as you will need a place to drive and park your car, AFIMSC ensures airmen have the infrastructure they need too. Much like a city works department maintains and repairs roads, AFIMSC oversees the development and maintenance of buildings, housing, roads, and airfields. They manage the policemen, landscapers, and construction workers for bases. They ensure we have the right gas in our vehicles and fuel in our airmen through our dining facilities and healthy eating initiatives. The Installation and Mission Support Center shapes the foundation of America's air, space, and cyber power and ensures our bases can project air and space power anywhere in the world. Air Force systems cannot operate indefinitely, and part of our mission at AFMC is to plan for and retire our aircraft and systems at the end of their operational life. Much like when your car reaches 150,000 miles, you must decide what is next. You will likely seek to buy a new vehicle, but what happens to the old one? It's retired and often used for parts. The Aircraft Maintenance and Regeneration Group, also part of the Sustainment Center, is responsible for the long-term storage of more than 4,000 retired aircraft. We can resurrect whole aircraft or use their parts to repair and maintain operational aircraft. Finally, we have the honor of preserving our Air and Space Force heritage at the National Museum of the Air Force. We keep more than 135,000 Air Force artifacts and stories to educate future generations on the history and importance of air and space power. It's located in Dayton, Ohio, and it's the oldest and largest military aviation museum in the world. From concept through design, operational use to final rest, there is not a platform, system, or product that hasn't been touched by an AFMC airman. We think our job is pretty important. Actually, we are the most important command to ensure our nation stays one step ahead of our adversaries, to deter future wars, and if deterrence fails, to win. We are one AFMC, powering the world's greatest Air Force.
Thank you. Let me now introduce AFA's Executive Vice President, Doug Rayburn, who will introduce the panel. Doug, please take it away.
Thank you, Chairman Murray. We now transition to a pivotal discussion with the key Air Force leaders responsible for producing and accelerating air, space, and cyber combat power, from its inception in a lab to acquisition to the leading edge delivery of lethality. Today's battle space has expanded with outer space as a warfighting domain, become more compressed in reaction time with the advent of hypersonic systems, and now ever more contested in the virtual realm. According to a recent Economist magazine article, the new battlefield today is information technology, semiconductors, data, 5G mobile networks, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing. Combined, these attributes call for more rapid, agile, and responsive acquisition, sustainment, and research the Air and Space Forces need to accelerate change or lose. Together, we will expand on Dr. Roper's perspectives and discuss the operational imperatives with commanders who are responsible for installations and mission support, discovery and development, test and evaluation, to lifecycle management services and sustainment of nearly every weapon system and capability in the United States Air Force. Joining us from the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, are my guests. General Arnie Bunch, Commander, Air Force Materiel Command. Lieutenant General Shaun Moores, Commander, Air Force Life Cycle Management Center. And Brigadier General Heather Pringle, Commander, Air Force Research Laboratory. I want to thank you for joining us for this timely and very important conversation. General Bunch, would you please provide some opening remarks, please?
Well, thanks, Doug. First, I want to thank AFA for this opportunity to represent the 87,000 plus AFMC airmen who I have the privilege to work for and represent today. I also thank you for the opportunity to share with our partners in industry and academia how Air Force Materiel Command is adapting to 21st century challenges and the 21st century opportunities. This is a team sport, and working together, we deliver and sustain war-winning capabilities for the nation. AFMC must collaborate to ensure we deliver technology and war-winning capabilities faster and smarter than our adversaries. Through our 6 centers, we research and develop new technology to expand our competitive edge. We buy, test, and maintain the Air Force's conventional and nuclear weapon systems. We build, maintain, secure, and provide critical services to both our Air and Space Force installations. After my first year and a half in this position, I am more convinced than ever that Air Force Materiel Command is the most important command in the United States Air Force to build the Air Force we need and meet the objectives of the National Defense Strategy and support the Chief's call to action to accelerate change or lose. I am not making that statement as an egotistical or, oh, look at us statement, but a recognition that everything we do in this command, we do for others. If we don't execute our mission, it is nearly impossible for the other major commands or the combatant commanders to be successful. Each AFMC airman, both uniformed and non-uniformed, executes their wartime mission each and every day. But the airmen in Air Force Materiel Command cannot do their mission alone. Our industry, academia, and community partners are very critical and key to our team and mission success. Speed with discipline has been one of our 4 lines of effort supporting our strategic plan. We fully recognize our role in accelerating the competitive edge of our Air Force. As we push for speed, we are revolutionizing our business practices and processes to ensure that the entire enterprise can accelerate the delivery of capabilities. Achieving discipline means that we've got to increase velocity internally and leverage the best of the commercial environment. Some of our major efforts include the digital enterprise and campaign, our Air Force S&T 2030 strategy, advancing air battle management systems, assimilating FWorks into the Air Force Research Laboratory and capitalizing on that great work, establishing and building an IT backbone that allows us to move at speed, executing Vanguard programs, experimenting and prototyping, utilization of advanced manufacturing and reverse engineering, conditions-based maintenance, distributed tests, and many, many others. The AFMC We Need initiative kicked off 18 months ago and is bearing fruit and sharpening our competitive edge to field the Air Force we need. We have made improvements to our IT and our infrastructure, but we still have a long way to go. And our AFMC uniformed and civilian airmen at all levels are sharing their innovative ideas and making us even stronger. I know our most important resource and the foundation of all of AFMC's efforts are our airmen. Each of the initiatives that I mentioned before and everything we do in the command has an undertaking toward our airmen and taking care of them and developing them. We also must continue to focus on those items identified in the AFMC we need so that we can recruit and retain that workforce we need for the future. Thanks again for the opportunity to be here today. I look forward to the questions and the dialogue.
Thank you very much, General Bunch. Let me pass it over to you, General Morris, for some thoughts. General Morris, let me pass it to you. We're unable to hear you. While they fix your microphone, let's see if we can pass over to perhaps General Pringle for a second.
Hey, thank you, General Rayberg, and thanks to AFA for hosting us here today. It's a beautiful setting, and it's truly an honor for me to join both General Bunch as the commander of Air Force Materiel Command, as well as General Morris for the Life Cycle Center on such an important topic that helps us accelerate the delivery of technology to our warfighters. And this topic and this discussion really comes at an important time to have with our industry and academic partners. And of course, as General Bunch so eloquently outlined the need for accelerating change and accelerating acquisition processes, I wanted to mention how at the Air Force Research Lab, the 6,000 men and women charged with the leading, discovering, developing, and delivering science, technology, and innovation to our warfighters in air, space, and cyber domains, we're doing a lot to accelerate our processes and consolidate our resources, as well as developing our transformational capabilities and the offices which help us deliver these cutting-edge capabilities to our warfighters. I wanted to keep my opening remarks really short because I knew we have a lot of great questions and I'm really looking forward to it. And I'll pass it back over to you, General Rayberg. Thanks again for having me here today.
Thank you, General Pringle. I'd like to now pass it over to you, General Morris, for your opening remarks, please.
Yeah, General Rayberg, can you hear me this time?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Just for the record, these microphones were not provided by the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. Hey, so thanks so much for having us on today. Thanks to General Bunch and General Pringle and for their opening remarks. I'm honored to be here today representing the 26,000 men and women of the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, who every day are delivering war-winning capabilities to our Air Force. If it isn't space and it isn't nuclear, it was delivered and provided by the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, and that's a big deal. We do say inside Lifecycle Management Center, our report card only has really one item, and that's the delivery of those war-winning capabilities to the warfighter. And that has two fundamental elements to it. One is obviously the capability that material brings, but the other is the timeliness, right? A war-winning capability delivered late isn't war-winning. And so when the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center was founded in 2012, one of the foundational tenets was speed with discipline. And so we are really excited inside Lifecycle Management Center about the Chief's Accelerate, Change, or Lose initiative and the action orders he recently published associated with that as well, because it is perfectly in line with the tenets of Lifecycle Management Center. And more importantly than just saying go fast, which is relatively easy to do, the Chief has highlighted that there are a number of impediments to going fast that are beyond just individuals at the pointy end of the acquisition spear. And his airman bureaucracy, competition design elements take on those structural elements that will enable all of us to go faster in delivering those capabilities. And so with that, General Rayberg, again, honored to be here and look forward to the questions.
Now, thank you very much, General Morris. Well, let's shift a little bit to some Q&A. And I'd like to start with you, General Bunch. The Chief of Staff, General C.Q. Brown, has been vocal that the Air Force service must accelerate the transition from the Air Force we have to the Air Force required for a future high-ed fight. How does a large and diverse command like AFMC accelerate, change, or lose? And secondly, How does this complement other initiatives AFMC has been pursuing? Sir.
So thank you for the question, and it's a great one that I get often by a lot of folks. And the reality is, I think all of the efforts that we're undertaking right now are complementary to and support General Brown's push for Accelerate, Change, or Lose. We've had a focus for quite some time on the National Defense Strategy, with this emphasis upon being in a competition and the need to put technology into the field at the speed of relevance, to increase our readiness, to improve our business processes, and to make sure we're better partnered with our allies and strengthening them. And all of the efforts tied into the National Defense Strategy, we're actually working on, and we're already doing things. If you look at last year was another banner year in foreign military sales that directly ties into the NDS. And one of the things General Brown's a big proponent of is using our allies and working with them and partnering them, particularly given what he did in PACAF as a commander. If you look at what we're doing with digital, if you look at what we're doing under Heather's watch with the S&T 2030 strategy, standing up a transformational capabilities office, re-looking at how we're spending our money, all of those efforts are to push and to try to get speed. If you look at what we're doing in the sustainment center with what we're trying to use commercial practices and bring those in so that we can better support and move quicker through the depot process, all of that is tied to speed. They directly support. If you look at what we're doing in the test community with distributed test operations, directly supports what General Brown's talking about. Even if you look at what we're doing in the Air Force Installation and Mission Support Center, with how we're putting building indices in for their care and digitizing how we track those investments, it all's tied together. And if you look at the Nuclear Weapons Center and you look at what they're doing with ground-based strategic deterrent, they're actually leading the way with a lot of our digital enterprise. So a lot of those efforts tied directly in. I would say also what we've started with the AFMC We Need and the initiatives that were kicked off by our airmen, because that was really us listening to our airmen about where we needed to go. A lot of that goes into eliminating bureaucracy, getting the decision-making process to the right place, and trying to motivate the team. The reality of it is, you look across our command, there's no one that comes in and goes, you know, I think I really want to go slow today. None of our airmen come into work with that as a mindset. They all want to go fast, but they all in many ways face impediments, which Shaun talked about. And we got to eliminate those. We're on that track. So I really believe the command is moving in the right direction. If you want just a really good example, and it's a small one, and it's one we've talked about before, but I think it's an example of what we can do when we're really empowered and we remove the impediments. It's how we came up with a transportation system for COVID positive service members that we could move anyone around the world. I looked in my email this morning. The email that I got was on the 17th of March from General Wilson. It didn't even have a go-do, didn't have an official document, but it was, here's a need that the combatant commander has said that they'd have. And through pulling Shaun's individuals into the party and Heather's and working with the test community and working with General Van Ovo's folks, all of those people working together, we gave a military flight release out to the field roughly 3 weeks later so that we could execute that mission. That shows what AFMC airmen, partnering with everyone else and our industry partners as well as the warfighters, can do if we're given the right priority, the right resources, and the impediments are removed. So I'm really proud of our team, and if we get after what General Brown's talking about with Accelerate, Change, or Lose, and we continue to execute what we're doing within the command, I'm very confident that we're not going to be an impediment along the way.
Sure, that's a great point. In fact, how appropriate given today is, let's say, launch day for getting the inoculations out. I can only imagine how much AFMC's fingerprint is on both the background, but also the push forward for those vaccines out to the needy people in America. Thank you, sir. General Morris, you know, there's a wave of new technologies coming with the potential to revolutionize the battle space, along with the authorities to acquire systems at a much faster pace. Do you see any variations in the way we train the workforce to adapt to these changes?
Yeah, great question. Well, absolutely, right? So as we talk about gaining agility in our weapon systems, we absolutely fundamentally have to think about how we get more agility into our training systems for our employees. I remember back when I came in the Air Force, you know, the first major thing I had to do as a second lieutenant was I chaired a subsystem preliminary design review. And then 2 months later, the Air Force sent me to Acquisition 101, where I learned what a preliminary design review was, along with this extensive length of the DoD 5000 series, which I was expect to remember, you know, for the rest of my career. That methodology just won't work anymore, right? As we've become far more agile in the methodologies that we use to acquire systems, in the techniques that we use to acquire systems, what we have to go now to is a training and education system that is much more training on demand, which enables folks to be able to reach into the training system and pull the information they need at the time that they need it, and then a certification system that is aligned with that training system. And so all of this is foundational now to thinking about, as we move one part of the system, right, we have to align all of the parts of the system to ensure that we set up our acquisition professionals for success. So absolutely great question. And I know this is something that's being worked at all levels of the acquisition community at the moment, in partnership with all aspects of our education community as well, to build a system that enables our folks to be successful.
Sir, thank you. Especially with the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, entire workforce and beyond, accelerating change. It's got to be gratifying as the commander to see that change in progress. Thank you, sir. General Pringle, let's shift to the United States Space Force. And with the stand-up of the Space Force nearing its first birthday here on the 20th of December, you know, what is the Air Force Research Lab doing to support the new service with regard to space, science, and technology?
We are doing a lot to support the United States Space Force. And in fact, what we like to say in AFRL is that we're one AFRL for two services. And what this means is no matter what part of the business enterprise you're in or what you're doing in AFRL, we are all re-looking at our businesses, our science, technology, and innovation to find new ways to support the unique demands of this warfighting domain with its unique requirements, its unique way of fighting the war. Of course, AFRL has been involved in space, science, and technology for years, if not decades. And today we know that this warfighting domain is critical to the way that we in the United States fight our war, whether it's command and control or precision navigation and timing technologies. And so it's absolutely critical that we contribute to the success of the United States Space Force and everything it's trying to achieve. The way that we have done this within the Air Force Research Lab, we've looked at our resources, our governance processes, and so much more. In fact, we have 700 personnel that will be supporting dedicated space, science, and technology in the near-term future. We've also named a Deputy Technology Executive Officer. He's acting at the moment, but his whole purpose is to synchronize the entire AFRL portfolio and to look at the nooks and crannies of AFRL and find all those unique aspects of space, science, and technology that we're conducting all across the enterprise. We've also conducted a number of space, science, and technology reviews. We kicked it off with a space science summit, which looked at what this warfighting domain is going to need in terms of science and technology in the next 60 years. We followed that up with a clean sheet summit, which took a fresh look at all our processes across AFRL and determined which of those business aspects, those business processes are well suited to supporting the United States Space Force, and which ones might need a little bit of an adaptation to best serve its unique needs. And just last week, we completed a TEO review of our space, science, and technology portfolio, and it's just the start. We have a lot more to look forward to in 2021 and what we're going to be rolling out. But the bottom line, General Rayberg, that I wanted to mention is that a technology doesn't know its application until we tell it. And that's to quote a very famous general to my right here. What this really means is that a technology can apply to a whole host of domains, and it's not until we further mature its application that it starts to solidify where it's going to work the best. And one example I have of that is the rapid densification of carbon-carbon. This material was originally developed to help with thermal management for things like ICBMs or hypersonic leading edges. But of course, recently we've found that it's also helpful in the space domain, whether it's rocket nozzles, which generate a lot of heat, as well as satellite electronics. And so this densification of the carbon-carbon materials is really making an impact. And we have so much more that we can apply to this as well. We even have a vanguard that is dedicated to supporting the United States Space Force. It's called Navigation Technology Satellite 3. It's precision navigation and timing for the next generation of warfighters. And we're really looking forward to what that delivers in the coming years. So General Rayberg, to answer your question, AFRL has been doing a lot, but we're going to continue to do even more to adapt and deliver for our space warfighting professionals. Thank you.
Yeah, what a great start. Thanks, General Pringle. I appreciate the inputs from all three. I couldn't help but think that, especially when you're talking about space, science and technologies, the small and medium businesses that you're focused on as well, to be able to accelerate these technologies to actual application. So I appreciate your answer there, General Pringle. I want to do a little shift here for our panel. General Bunch, let's talk a little bit about digital campaign and the digital future. First of all, would you touch on Material Command's digital campaign, and where do you see really major opportunities? And back to small, medium, and prime industry, how do you see industry helping?
So Doug, that's a great question, one that we're very focused on. It is an area that I think we have tremendous promise to be able to move out and make a significant change in the way that we do everything in the lifecycle management of a platform. We kicked off our campaign in the February-March timeframe. And what I would say one of the bigger benefits that we got out of that was, even then, and it's continued forward, is the collaboration. I went over and did the kickoff meeting that we started, and we had representatives from each of the AFMC centers. We had representatives from AQ, we had the Space and Missile Systems Center represented, and we had the Rapid Capabilities Office. So what I want to get out of this is a way to link the life cycle of a platform into a digital model so that we can do things at the speed of relevance. So that when Heather's team is looking to do research, they will know how to fit into maybe a digital model of something that we've already got out there. Or when Piazzano's team is doing test work at Arnold or at Edwards or at Eglin, that'll feed into a model that Shaun's team went out and bought and procured the rights to, so that we could feed those test results back in and we could see how the system performed even quicker. Or when G. Kirkland's team is looking years down the road at how they're going to sustain these systems, that we can tie that back in and we can make great sustainment decisions from the very beginning of how we look at it. That's where I see the true promise feeding across the whole life cycle of a weapon system so that we can do a better job of taking care of it. I also believe, and GBSD is one of our leads, it clearly ties into what we're doing in the Nuclear Weapons Center. And then the other one that not everybody plays into here is the Air Force Installation and Mission Support Center. If we can use digital modeling and we can find out how systems are performing, it can make the way we support our installations even better as well. So I see tremendous promise here. We have 6 lines of effort that range everywhere from what we're doing with our people, all the way with what we're doing for the cloud environment, what kind of tools we need, what do we need to put on contract, what kind of an architecture. So it runs the full spectrum of what we're trying to do for a weapon system or a facility or anything else that we would go procure. What I really would ask the industry to do is partner with us and let us know what they've experienced in these areas. In some ways, some of them are far more advanced than we are, and in other areas, I think we're ahead of them. So I think we're going to need to collaborate and share ideas, share concerns, and create the right environment so that we can share data and work in a collaborative manner so that they can be successful and we can be successful as we try to push technology out there at speed of relevance. So I think there's a lot there. I think the other one we really got to work on is a common lexicon. I've had people tell me they're doing digital, but really what they're doing is they are doing some of their paperwork and some of the documentation on computers. Not really what we're looking for here. By the same token, we often don't use the right language. So I think we're going to have to come up with a common lexicon, and we're going to have to develop the workforces across both parts, our part and industry's part, so that we're all talking a common language so that together we can move forward to better support the warfighter.
Sure, thank you. That's interesting because what you're describing is the ability to expand AFMC enterprise in the virtual realm in a completely new way, and to be able to accelerate simultaneously. That is very insightful. Thank you. General Morris, what does the evolution or kind of transformation of advanced manufacturing, and this is near and dear to my heart, due to our traditional business model to deliver combat capability to the war fighters, and what would the future really look like in advanced manufacturing?
Yeah, great question. So not only am I commander of Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, I'm also the program executive officer for the Rapid Sustainment Office, which is the Air Force lead for enhancing our use of advanced manufacturing, specifically in sustainment. I'm going to talk a little bit more broadly than that, but I'll come back to the sustainment element. Advanced manufacturing fundamentally has opportunities to change how we think about weapon system design and sustainment from the beginning. And so if you think about design at the front end, right, there are things you can do with advanced manufacturing parts that you fundamentally cannot do with traditional manufacturing, whether that be shapes, flow paths, strength to weight ratios of parts that will enable us, as advanced manufacturing grows, to build weapon systems that just have greater capability than what they have today using those techniques. On the sustainment side, there's also an opportunity for a revolution that exists here as well. And that's why we held just back in October the first Advanced Manufacturing Olympics, where we took the advanced manufacturing value stream from the beginning, which is when I identified that I've got a part that needs to be replaced and I have no source for that part at all, through the end, which is I've now built a part using advanced manufacturing techniques and I need to get it certified onto the airplane. And through that value stream, we identified where all the current limitations are, and then we built challenges inside the Advanced Manufacturing Olympics to attack each one of those constraints in the process, with the idea being to significantly reduce the amount of time it takes for us to be able to, from identification of a challenge to putting an advanced manufacturing part on an airplane. And we've made huge strides. And if you think about where the vision of that could go, it's pretty phenomenal. When you combine that with what we're doing with Condition-Based Maintenance Plus, where we're using data analytics, machine learning, AI, to better understand sustainment drivers on our airplanes, understand when parts are going to fail in advance of them failing so that we can replace them beforehand so we avoid unscheduled maintenance. And if you think about how you might combine that then with a robust advanced manufacturing capability, where not only does the airplane now tell you I've got a part that's going to fail, but it can actually trigger then back in a hangar location somewhere an advanced manufacturing machine to build that part for you before the airplane lands, such that as soon as you land, you're ready to exchange it. I mean, the capabilities here, when you think about what that future vision could be, are phenomenal. And our Rapid Sustainment Office, tied to the Air Force Sustainment Center in particular, but also with the Air Force A4, is really working on each one of those constraints in a way that I think will enable that future much sooner than anybody imagines.
Well, that directly touches on the heart of Dr. Roper's point about embracing commercial technologies. I'm pretty sure there's quite a few commanders out there right now who would relish the opportunity to have a part manufactured before you touch down, so you can turn those combat sorties much quicker, regardless of platform. So thank you, General Morris. General Pringle, let's kind of talk about the Department of the Air Force's Science and Technology 2030 strategy. I think our audience would be very interested in what is the Air Force Research Lab really doing to develop and then really deliver those transformational capabilities to the war fighters in air, space, and cyber?
Thank you, General Rayberg. The Department of the Air Force Science and Technology 2030 strategy was signed in April of 2019 to really get after the challenges that we see in the 21st century and the rate of technological change, which could be accessible to so many disparate actors across the world. So the S&T 2030 strategy developed two complementary business models for delivering science, technology, and innovation. One of these models is a broad-based, enabling, and enduring approach to science and technology that is supporting the long-range care and feeding of our scientists, technologists, and innovators in the traditional disciplines, but it also has a complementary part of the business model that focuses on transformational capabilities, those that are multidisciplinary, leap ahead, and are going to be game changers for our warfighters. And so what we did at AFRL is we deconstructed the 2030 strategy. We looked at it from soup to nuts, and we took it to heart at how we could implement those two core business models in our day-to-day activities. And one of the biggest efforts that we had to undertake was building and establishing a whole portfolio to get after transformational technologies. We stood up a Transformational Capability Office, also called the TCO, and they're the ones that are leading the charge in building our Vanguard capabilities. We had to get them resources. We had to get them a whole pipeline of activities so that we could come up with seedling ideas generated from any corner of the United States, whether it's industry, academia, or even internal to the government or to the Air Force Research Lab. And then we would curate and mature these concepts into some developmental ideas, to some prototypical, some prototypes that could be tested. And that's through our war tech, our war fighting and technologist process, which is ongoing right now. And ultimately, once a technology graduates through this war tech process, it gets teed up to the Capabilities Development Council, which is co-led by the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force and the Vice Chief of Staff of Operations of the Space Force. And they decide what technologies are best suited, are most mature to graduate to the Vanguard process. And of course, that's where we bring together all the parties and all the strengths of the Department of the Air Force to deliver these transformational capabilities. We bring together Life Cycle Management Center program executive officers. We bring together the designers who are in AFWIC or the Space Warfighting Analysis Center. And of course, we bring together the warfighters. And together, that helps us accelerate the delivery of technology to the warfighters in ways that we haven't seen before. So just in September, we announced initial operating capability for our Transformational Capabilities Office. And that was a huge milestone just to establish that office and announce an IOC. So right now, of course, we're in phase 2 and we're looking to institutionalize all those processes that the TCO has stood up over the last year and past couple months. We're also going to focus our phase 2 implementation of the 2030 strategy on 2 key areas. 1 is partnerships and 2 is our workforce. In the world of partnerships, we're really trying to deepen and expand our network of folks who are coming up with ideas that will help us deliver transformational capabilities, as well as those who are going to partner with us in producing those capabilities. And I suspect we'll talk a little bit more about what AFWorks is doing to help us in this regard a little bit later. And on the workforce side, of course, none of the technology would be possible without the 6,000 scientists, engineers, and innovators and professionals that get the job done. We're focusing on developing their skills, increasing their collaboration, collaborative abilities, and as General Bunch mentioned earlier, we're working to connect them digitally in the universe so that we can crowdsource the science, technology, and innovation that is needed for our warfighters. So I'm really looking forward to what we have ahead in the coming year in implementing the S&T 2030 strategy.
Let me stick with you, General Pringle, and then I'm going to go backwards because I think our audience would be very interested in how do you directly support the National Defense Strategy, but I think it starts with really a simple question. As a commander, what systems, what capabilities or technologies do you personally see our adversaries developing, especially China and Russia, or ones that they're employing that really concern you the most and perhaps have sharpened your focus of attention for your command? I think we'd all be very curious what concerns you.
That's a really great question. And what I want to open with is the whole of nation approach that is consolidating resources in a way that is going to be a challenge for our nation to keep up with. And we're going to have to adapt and adjust to this whole of nation approach. In fact, China has developed a plan to be a science and technology world leader in the future. And not only do they have a plan, but as I've mentioned, they are putting resources behind it, and they are collecting the talent that would be necessary to implement such a plan. So I have to say, this approach is something that we're really watching closely, and that's why we need to accelerate change, frankly, is to keep up with this holistic approach to delivering technology. But furthermore, they're applying these resources in areas that cause us a little bit of worry. Things such as increasing their investment in hypersonics, working to leverage the technologies of quantum, artificial intelligence, and what's going on in biotechnology, ensuring that we have appropriate ethical standards for the use of this technology is something that we're watching really closely and thinking a lot about. So in AFRL, we are adapting to what we see going on in the world. For example, we're working to increase the trust between the human and the machine so that as we apply artificial technologies to our capabilities, that we have the appropriate levels of trust and interaction and can employ them in a way that meets our expectations and doesn't cause us any surprises. We're also working to increase the speed and lethality of our warfighting capabilities, as you've heard as well. And finally, to add some resiliency to our command and control, as well as precision navigation and timing capabilities. And so all in all, there's a lot we need to do, and we just really need to get after it quickly.
Thank you. And General Morris, likewise, what capabilities, technologies really personally concern you, especially regarding our adversaries?
General Rayberg, I'm gonna kind of build off of what General Pringle said to a degree, because I'm not as focused on technologies for today as much as I am where they're going in the future, right? And so to use a skeet shooting analogy, right, you shoot ahead of the target to where the target's going to be, because if you shoot at it, you're going to end up behind. And so this is what is built off of what Dr. Roper talks about, right, is the acquisition trinity. Digital engineering and model-based systems engineering combined with agile software development, combined with modular systems, open systems architecture. And the reason he talks about that, right, is because it enables our weapon systems to be highly flexible to adjust to future technologies. But it requires two elements of it in order for them to be flexible enough. And one is what General Pringle just talked about, which is a very agile science and technology process that develops and fields new technology rapidly that we can then use that trinity to be enabled by, to be able to get those capabilities under our warfighter. But it also requires an element that we don't talk about as much, which is relevant acquisition intelligence associated with where our adversaries are going. And so one of the things we've done in Lifecycle Management Center is we have deployed out our intelligence analysts out into the programs to help ensure our individual programs and program executive officers are intelligence informed in their acquisition efforts, so that they can, as they build out that capability, they're looking at the right things. Because in the end, what we want to do is ensure that wherever our adversaries go, we're already there, right? We want them constantly reacting to us, not the opposite way around. And that's where we've been in the past, and where we found ourselves becoming more and more challenged. But that's where we need to get back to, is not letting our adversaries have any path where when they get there, they actually find that they've got some advantage over us. And that trinity and acquisition, combined with the S&T 2030 roadmap that General Pringle and her team are doing, combined with this revolution in how we think about acquisition intelligence in partnership with all the intelligence agencies, I think is the pathway to get us there.
Sure, thank you. That's it's so important to lead turn, literally get ahead of our adversaries in our thought leadership as well as our actions. So thank you. General Bunch, same question, but I'm confident a lot of people will be listening to your answer.
So Doug, it is an important area that we're working, and I'm very pleased that both of them gave a lot of what I would probably give as an answer, which means we're kind of synced up, which is what you would hope out of the MATCHCOM. One of the drivers that we're very focused on right now is the National Strategy for Critical and Emerging Technologies that the White House published in October of 20. And it gives an idea into some of the technologies that are out there and how those technologies are coming along in areas that we need to be focused on for where we need to drive. I love what Heather talked about with S&T 2030, trying to harvest what's out there and move at speed. I love what Shaun talked about. We're trying to do digital by having the open and modular, the agile software development, and creating the environment to be able to inject as technology changes or the threat changes, new capabilities to go even faster, which is what we've been really looking for as we started modular, and what we really were looking for as we moved to digital. So everything they talked about are all great things we got to do. The other one that Shaun hit on that I want to touch on just a little bit more, one of the first things we did when I got into the command, we formed a more close tie with NASIC and Lieutenant General O'Brien's team, National Air and Space Intelligence Center, to prioritize higher some of the acquisition intel things that we needed to do, so that when Shaun talked about that we didn't want our acquirers being surprised by where our potential adversaries may be going and we were better informed, we actually raised the priority and got more intel focused on acquisition than maybe in some other areas than we had before. That ties into a lot of what Heather talked about. It's going to take a whole of government. We need to set intelligence priorities that allow our acquisition activities to be prioritized high enough that they're getting the real-time intel, so that if we need to make a shift or we need to make a minor adjustment, that we can do that. The other one we just recently started, and I won't go into the program we did it on, I'll just say we've done this recently. We actually are trying a model where we are creating metrics that we're getting regular updates from the intel community on how we're performing against a set of standards, and what is the adversary looking at in those areas. Are we still going to be able to meet the parameters we need in the acquisition? We're going to get regular updates with the program executive officer and the senior leaders at the MAGCOM level and the air staff level, so we're all more aware of how intel is playing into this. And we're going to look at how that goes, and then if it shows fruit and there's stuff to be gained there, then we'll grow that out over time to be more responsive and more of our programs, as Shaun was talking about. It's really going to take a whole of government to get at this. The one area that we haven't really touched on that I think we're going to have to continue to focus is making sure that we're protecting our intellectual capital. We're investing large sums of money into developing programs that Shaun and his team are going out and doing the acquisition of, trying to put in the field. Heather's got a lot of intellectual capital and national treasure that's going into research and development of new technologies. We need to make sure we're protecting that. A lot of our intellectual capital has been stolen as people have gone into our networks and taken things, and we've got to continue to keep a focus on protecting that. I don't want our billions or millions or whatever it is, dollars of investment being siphoned off at a fraction of the dollar so that someone else can capitalize on that. And we need to continue to make our investments to ensure that we're protecting our networks and our intellectual capital so that it's for our most valued treasure, America's sons and daughters, as we send them into harm's way, and not that someone else is going to be able to capitalize that on a fraction of the cost.
Sure. Let me do a change up, and for you, General Bunch, let's make a shift from really platform to people, our most important warfighting folks. And that is, you know, you've talked about the importance of your workforce and that your people are the foundation to Air Force Material Command success and supporting the National Defense Strategy. So on that note, you know, what initiatives have you taken to improve the human weapon system?
So Doug, you said it exactly right. Our airmen are our most valuable resource. They're foundational to anything else that we're going to do in this command. And I would only take exception to one minor thing. I actually believe I work for them. But they're foundational to everything we're going to do. And if we don't get that part right, the rest of it really isn't going to matter. So some of the things we've done, taking the AFMC initiative, AFMC We Need initiative, a lot of our airmen identified some areas they didn't think they were getting the right kind of training. And we've gone out and we just recently had an Agile Patriot, which was a command-wide leadership thing for first-level supervisors. We had over 1,000 folks that we did virtually, got together, had great speakers, educated them on the command, educated them on where we're trying to go, so that they more closely understood how their day-to-day activities tied into the overall mission of the United States Air Force. Another area that we got a lot of feedback on was our first-level supervisor training was not very good. We piloted a program. We're going to launch it AFMC-wide in January for first-level supervisors to better train them. That one's really critical because we need high-quality first-level supervisors. But as Chief Stan Cadell, my command chief, has told me, Many people find that if you want to retain high quality airmen, that first level supervisor is the reason they stay or it's the reason they go. And so we got to get that first level supervisor training right so that they're better prepared and they're willing to come work for us. We are trying to figure out how to bring on new airmen quicker. We've got about over 40% since 2018. We've reduced our hiring timelines. We're continuing to work on that to try to make it better. We have recently introduced targets for how fast and how well we want people to be acculturated and onboarded. The target that I've given everyone is I want 4 days from someone coming in to they go through their training, they go through and they have an ID card, they've met up with their supervisor, they've got IT access to the network so that they're productive members as soon as they get in. So we have a lot of different efforts that we're going into to try to get after our workforce. The other one that I will hit, and it's kind of more recent as we've gone into COVID, is what we're looking at for telework. Telework is one of those that we did some pockets of it. We had other pockets that, no, you can't do it. We got to have you here. What we've clearly demonstrated in Air Force Materiel Command since COVID hit in March is that we can telework in a lot of areas and we can still get the mission done. So what we're doing right now is we're coordinating with the centers and we're developing a telework guideline. We're looking at what the roadblocks are for trying to capitalize more on telework and look at what those rule sets are to go figure out what things I need to go bang on my high chair like a spoiled 2-year-old to try to get the rules changed so that we can do more than they may have been able to do before. But maybe I don't have to have someone sitting right at in Dayton, Ohio, or in Boston, or wherever it may be if I want them to work for us. Maybe I can, through telework, recruit someone in Silicon Valley or in Texas or wherever it may be that they have that skill set. I don't have to move them exactly to where we are to be able to capitalize on that skill set that they can bring. Now, there are limitations with that, but that's just to give you an idea of what we're trying to think forward on to be able to move out to capitalize. I believe telework and the increased use of telework is going to be a recruiting key. I also think it's going to be a retention key. I think many of the younger generation, not geezers like me, are going to want to have some ability to do telework and be more flexible than someone like I grew up in the Air Force to be able to do. I think that's going to be a key to being able to retain the workforce of the future. All of our initiatives are grounded in creating an environment where every airman has the opportunity to succeed to his or her full potential. So we know our airmen are key. We got a lot of different initiatives that are ongoing in this area to create the right environment for them to succeed, get them trained to be able to do all those new things like digital, data analytics, how they develop software, what do we have in hypersonics. So we got a lot of initiatives there, Doug, and it's one you can probably tell I'm a little bit passionate about.
Stand by.
Sure, I'm with you. And it's one topic that we need to really stay focused on. Our time is getting limited, but I definitely want to hear from General Morris and General Pringle in the similar fashion. So General Morris, Lifecycle Management Center, how do you support efforts towards talent management and hiring timelines?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are absolutely aligned. I'm not going to repeat, I could repeat all the things that General Bunch just said, because we are absolutely aligned on all of them. But let me just give you one focus area for us, which is really this idea of talent management at the tactical edge, right? And so all the feedback we've got from our folks is we just need to get better and back to the basics in how we engage with our folks. All of our folks need to clearly understand how they connect to the mission. They should have clear recognition and understanding of what is expected from them over the next period of time. They should expect to be able to get candid and positive feedback about how they're performing and what they need to do to get better. Our individual first line supervisors should know all of the individuals personally and understand what it is that they want to accomplish in their career and help them build a path that gets them there. And so to me, this is really basic blocking and tackling at leadership And that's a big focus for us, along with all the other things that General Bunch talked about. But we're really trying to get back to basics here because we think that's where a lot of the challenges that are highlighted to us are, and that's where a lot of the opportunities are for us to get better quickly.
And shortly, General Pringle, in developing new relationships, seriously, how are you partnering with non-traditional stakeholders and shareholders, especially on innovation and particularly with AFWERX in your portfolio?
Oh, that's a great question, and I'm so glad that you asked. AFWERX has joined the AFRL team within the last 6 months, and we couldn't be more excited about having their energy and enthusiasm as part of our family. Of course, you know that they are chartered with reaching out to non-traditional industry entrepreneurs and generating a variety of ideas, excitement, and partnering in new and different ways. And I wanted to mention that just last week, they had a big culminating event called AFWERX Accelerate, and it brought together the three entities of AFWERX from the Spark team, which generates interest at the grassroots level across all our airmen and space professionals. It also brought together App Ventures, which is bringing the capital to bear with these non-traditional and entrepreneurial industry activities. And finally, and most exciting, which you heard Dr. Roper talk about just a little while ago, Agility Prime, which is creating a market and partnering in the flying taxi industry to ensure that this capability grows and develops in a way that is complementary to our civilian and military standards. It reduces risk on both parties' parts, and we're really excited to see about what they're doing. Also, last week at the Accelerate AFWERX event, they announced the opening of a West Coast AFWERX site called SpaceWorks, and this, of course, is going to support the new United States Space Force, as well as a Space Prime. There were about 6 Design a Prime activities that were initiated last week, from microelectronics to autonomy, as well as energy. But the one that's going to get the first look in 2021 is the Space Prime. And I just have to say, we're just thrilled to have AFWERX as part of our team. We're bringing the whole of Air Force Research Lab to bear to support their activities and truly institutionalize their way of innovation and ensuring their success for the long run.
So General Pringle, 30 seconds, final thought.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It's an exciting time to be part of the AFRL, and we look forward to leading, discovering, developing, and delivering cutting-edge technology for the next 100 years. Thank you.
No, thank you. General Morris, please,
Thanks,
final
General.
thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. And this idea of flying taxis, having been in a New York City cab, the idea of New York City cab drivers being able to operate in 3 dimensions, I'm going to let General Pringle go first. But thanks very much. Thanks for the opportunity to represent the 26,000 men and women of Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, and appreciate you guys putting on this event.
No, thank you, sir. And General Bunch, please top us off with your thoughts.
So thank you very much, AFA, Doug, for the opportunity. It's a great venue. Thanks to the museum staff for setting it up. While we've been doing this, there have been families walking around with kids and strollers and toddlers. You never know which one of them is going to be the next chief staff of the Air Force and how it's going. So it's a great venue and able to do it. Having said that, I do want to say a special shout out to the Yeager family. We lost a legend, and as the most seasoned, probably uniform tester in the Air Force right now, a special shout out to the Yeager family. Our thoughts and prayers are with you as you go through this challenging time. General Yeager was a true legend and a hero, and I had the privilege of interacting with him multiple times over the years, and any of the testers that are out there and test teams that he interacted with, they always walked away motivated, revved up, and ready to go hard charge. So really thoughts and prayers to them. As you can probably tell out of this, Doug, we're a little bit proud. I'm proud of the commanders that I get the privilege of working for. We're proud of all 87,000 plus of the airmen in AFMC that we get to work for and with. We're doing a lot of great things, and we're really happy to talk about them, and we're a little bit passionate. In this case, passion is a good thing. We're going into the holidays for all the deployed airmen and their families. Thank you for your service and sacrifice. We really appreciate it. And the last thing, go Air Force, beat Army.
Sir, I'm going to echo that last point, and definitely thank you for mentioning General Yeager, now promoted to a higher rank, and his family. Our thoughts and prayers with them as well, and to those deployed. Generals, thank you. And I want to personally thank your entire team and all those in your command and throughout the Air Force and the Space Force for giving this unique and insightful discussion. You know, so good to be with the Air Force Material Command leaders as you accelerate acquisition to the lethal edge, both for our Air Force and Space Force and their operational capability. You know, I'd like to personally thank the director of the National Military Museum of the Air Force, Mr. Dave Tillotson, and the Air Force Museum Foundation Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Mike Imhoff, for hosting our panelists and providing a very fitting venue at the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force. Also, a big shout out to our AFA Wright Memorial chapter leaders for making this so possible. It's been an honor to virtually join you from here at the AFA General James Doolittle Leadership Center. So now, Mr. Chairman and Mr. President, let me pass this back to you for your closing remarks. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Generals Bunch, Morris, and Pringle. The F-22 and the National Museum of the Air Force there in your backdrop absolutely look spectacular.
Well, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks once again to the incredible volunteer leadership of our Air Force Association's Wright Memorial Chapter in Dayton, led by Dave Babcock today, and we just can't thank you enough.
Yes, indeed. What a fantastic event. Thanks to AFA's Wright Memorial Chapter. And let me say also the thanks that we've had from the great support of our comms and our logistics and others who have helped us in this Zoom environment that we're in to bring this about. In the Pentagon, to the birthplace of aviation there at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and our great museum, to our Doolittle Leadership Center and all of the staff support, even supporting me out here in the hinterland on the coast of South Carolina where we're at today. Again, just great support, and what a support team that even working from wherever they are, many of them from their own homes or other areas, we can't thank them enough. You know, I hope everybody watching today really enjoyed our inaugural Doolittle Leadership Center Forum. We'll be bringing more to you and more forums in the 2021, similar to today's forum. The goal of the AFA's General James Doolittle Leadership Center is for the DLC to be the epicenter of interaction and collaboration between airmen, space professionals, industry, and others. Thank you. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, other seasons, and Happy New Year as we look forward to the year ahead.